Deputy City Attorney at Charlottesville. She's running for House of Delegates in a competitive race. We love to see competitive, contested elections, as friend of the program Neil Williamson often describes. Guys, give the show a like and a share. When it begins, you, the viewer and listener, can join us in the discussion and offer questions, thoughts, perspective, ideas, and help shape the conversation. Today's show is presented by Scott Wagner Integrative Medicine. Judah, we are live on all social channels literally right now. I see 3 local media outlets watching the program. Katrina Coulson, about 10 minutes into the show, guys. I'm in your hands there, J-Dubs. We can rock and roll when you're ready.
All right. Quiet on the set.
Good Friday afternoon, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love Seville show. Thank you kindly for joining us. A program presented by Scott Wagner of Scott Wagner Integrative Medicine. Dr. Wagner has your back. Today's program is loaded. We have some restaurant news to get out of the notebook for you. Sad news on a brand that has positively for 11 years served this community. Another restaurant closing. Unfortunately, that story in a matter of moments. On today's program, we'll welcome Katrina Coulson to the program. She is running for the Virginia House of Delegates. She is a rock star. She's a deputy city attorney. She's the chairwoman of the Albemarle County School Board. She wears a lot of hats, and we will try to introduce you, the community, to all those hats that she wears on today's show. I also want to give props to the Clifton for being a part of the program. My wife and I, special dinner and happy hour at the Clifton last week. It's a fantastic place for memories, the Clifton in Keswick. Judah Wickhauer, the director, we give him props on a daily basis for keeping us online. And Judah, I was sad to see when I woke this morning the news of Ace Biscuit and Barbecue's closing. Brian Ashworth, the owner of Ace Biscuit and Barbecue, has come on this program a couple of times. In fact, I think you can show photos from his previous visits. One's on screen now. 11 years Ace Biscuit and Barbecue has been open, and they announced today that they are closing soon. The hits keep coming. Peloton Station in December. Paradox Pastry closed over here in the glass building, but they're moving to Dairy Market. Be Conscious is closing in the Dairy Market. Angelique's closed in the Dairy Market. This topic is multi-pronged. Cost of goods have become volatile and extremely expensive. The consumer is pinching pennies now. That credit card debt is at an all-time high in America, and the dollar just is not stretching as far. And in fact, another theme that's causing some of these closings is something we'll bring up with candidate Katrina Coulson. It's just really expensive to live here. So if you're in the food service industry and you can't afford to live in Charlottesville and Albemarle, and you have to commute 45 minutes to a food service job in Charlottesville and Albemarle, eventually you're going to ask yourself, is the return on investment there? Does it make sense for me to drive 50 minutes from the other side of the mountain, from Stanton, Waynesboro, Buckingham, for a job where I'm spending 90 minutes round trip in a car? So affordability undoubtedly impacting restaurants and causing some of these staffing shortages and closings as well. Before we get to Katrina Coulson, I want to get Judah Wickhauer's take on this in a matter of moments, but if you're just tuning into the show, Ace Biscuit and Barbecue closing forever, Paradox Pastry moving to Dairy Market, and Be Conscious closing in Dairy Market. Where do you want to begin with this one? I mean, I almost thought, Judah, that Ace was insulated from this because of its rabid and loyal following. But when someone that's been in operation for 11 years and their farewell post says, this just is not the same field anymore, this is just not the same kind of work anymore, that really resonated with me, the comment from Brian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've been seeing the effects of everything from the pandemic to the out of control interest.
Debt service, floating debt. Fed raising the rate. And anyone that has any kind of floating debt, that debt service is becoming more expensive. We saw EIDL and PPP loans come due this past November. The small business owner feeling that pinch as well as that payment has come due. Scott Aaronworth's in Virginia Beach. He's watching the program. Got Lynchburg, Northern Virginia, Richmond, Outer Banks, folks outside Philly, Crozet, downtown, and Keswick on the feed right now. I wish him the best. I wish him the best. Brian and his family the best in whatever they do.
Yeah.
And just like I did with Angelique, just like I did with Curtis at Peloton Station, just like we do with any business, we wish them the best. But I'm here to tell you, and it's not my news to mention, more closings from iconic businesses are on the very near horizon. Maybe as early as next week. All right, Judah Wickhauer, why don't we go to the studio camera and then the two-shot as we welcome someone that's been in the news lately. And for a number of reasons. Katrina Colson. She is the chair of the Albemarle County School Board. She is running for House of Delegates. Mm-hmm. She is a deputy city attorney in Charlottesville. She's an evangelist for the area. Welcome to the show.
Can I move this? Is this better?
That's perfect.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
We're doing so great. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Introduce yourself to 3 media outlets and thousands of folks watching you right now on this program.
Well, I hope some of them know me. I've been involved in the community for quite a while. I've been doing work on behalf of women and children and families in our area. And yeah, I'm happy to jump into questions about my candidacy or whatever questions people have for me.
Well, how about this? And viewers and listeners, if you have questions for the candidate, put them in the feed. I'll relay them live on air. Same for the media that's watching the show. Why'd you get into politics for the first place? It's not for the money. I mean, this causes a lot of headache, a lot of time away from your family, which I know you love.
Yeah.
Why did you get into politics for the first place?
That's right. I have two young boys, and it does take time away, and it's certainly not for the money, and it's not for the recognition either. I've been working for the school board for a long time, and one thing I've heard with this candidacy is, who is she? And I'm like, I've been working hard for a long time. It's not for recognition. I'm a military brat. And I was very apolitical growing up. That's a military trait, I feel like, if you're growing up in military communities. And I didn't really think about politics. I was also from a very low income family. And politics feels like something that's way above you. And I think when politics first started to really sink into something I should be concerned about, I went to Yale for college, and my freshman year when my dad was in the military and he was being deployed to Iraq, I had a class with Barbara Bush, George Bush's daughter. He was the president then. And I remember sitting in that class next to her and thinking, your dad's decisions, political aspirations are affecting my father and my family and our life. And I was active after that. I will say, the reason I'm in this race is different. I didn't have aspirations for this seat, but two issues that are near and dear to my heart and that I've been working on for many years, my whole professional career, and that is women's rights and access to a quality, inclusive public education are increasingly being debated at the state level. And I want, at this moment in time, there to be a representative in Richmond who can speak to those issues passionately, personally, and effectively.
Well said. Inspiring. You know, you mentioned something that folks said, who is Katrina Colson? And you respond, I've been on the school board for an extended period of time here. I think just of late, the school board has become like the topic of conversation. I mean, it's been in like the last,
So
year and change here?
No, I'm going to do.
You take it further since COVID?
I would take
Since
yes.
COVID.
No, I would take and Charlottesville specifically because of the events of August 12th. I feel like schools have been. It's been a different experience. When I ran for school board in 2017, it was often just me and my competitor.
It was crickets.
Yes, it was
like
crickets.
literally crickets.
Yes.
Now it's the
trenches,
dude. Now it's like the hot ticket. Like this past school
the hot ticket nobody wants, but
it's seriously the hot ticket. I mean, like The last school board meeting, there was 100+ teachers.
Yeah.
I was there. There were stakeholders, there were community leaders, there were media, there were folks live tweeting. I mean, you guys on the dais have become almost household names now. I think schools, in a lot of ways, especially since this is an off-off year, no president race, no governor race. It's an off-off year. Generally, in off-off years, engagement is very, very low. I think this year is going to be very, very different. Because I think schools and the political battleground that schools have become are going to drive people to the polls. Anywhere you want to go on this topic?
Yeah, I have a lot of things to say. I guess one thing I always say is that parents are passionate about their children, and rightfully so. Everybody, if we talk about finding common ground in what is becoming an increasingly contentious political environment, I will say that people want what is best for their children.
Amen. We certainly do.
Yeah. So I think the ability to listen to that, even when viewpoints might differ, is experience I would bring to the role. I know I'm selling myself, but to some extent that's what this is about, is experience I bring to the role, because you are right. School boards have been a battleground, and I am proud of the work that Albemarle has done. I know that since I've been chair, I've really put a focus on increasing our transparency, openness, accountability, and doing that hard work, because it has been hard. And that's, the recent political climate is very different. And as someone who's currently elected and is able to navigate that, I think that's a strength and experience that I bring, because you were right.
I mean, I look for
We're
the
doing
news
better
on
than
schools.
Spotsylvania.
Amen. Thank God. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. Like, we've talked schools literally, and you're 100% right. It hasn't been the last year. It's been since COVID.
Yeah.
That this has become a battleground issue. Do you think McAuliffe lost the election with those comments he made about parents shouldn't be actively involved with their kids
Okay.
in school? You remember those comments?
I do, and I'm going to change it to the affirmative and say that I think Youngkin won on education.
I agree.
I think that, and that's why I think I'm a Democrat. I think Democrats have traditionally considered education just a solid foundation of our party ideals, but we are, not to say sleeping at the helm, but the Republicans are gaining traction by implying that our schools, it's not just about defunding our schools, although we certainly need more funding, and I'm happy to talk about the funding structures that exist in Virginia that can kind of cripple the locality's ability to share the budgetary burden of educating our students, but it's about devaluing. It's not just defunding, they're devaluing public education. And that's something, if you contrast what's, for example, last year going on in New York, where they pushed forward a bunch of bills that were actually around teacher retention. There's research to show that 30 to 45% of teachers leave within the first 5 years. There's certainly research, and we can just say common sense value to knowing that an experienced teacher brings value to a classroom. They have more ability, they've got more experience. And so they're introducing bills pushing, how do we keep teachers in the field? We know that this is a coming crisis, teacher retention and recruitment. How do we boldly embrace teacher diversity? Is one of the few research-backed ways to affect achievement gaps is having teachers in our classrooms from a variety of diverse backgrounds, so that students at some point in their schooling career can have a teacher that is reflective and representative of the experience they have. It helps them become more engaged in learning. So New York is pushing that stuff forward. In Virginia, if you went and looked at the bills that were introduced this year, they are about libraries and what books are in libraries, and how do we keep books away from children.
Right.
And that's a problem for me. That is one of the reasons I'm running. It's one of the reasons that I'm walking down in heels on a rainy day to come do this radio show. And
thank you. We appreciate you.
I thought it was going to be a little warmer. It's been like spring for the last week, and then I walked out the door and I'm like,
it's raining and 35 degrees, and you have to be on front of a camera, and you walk from City Hall.
Although it's not that far.
No, half a block.
Yeah, it's not far at all. So that's one of the things driving me, and I think there's work that we can do at a state level to really impact children. And I want to say it's personal to me. It's my lived experience. Both my parents dropped out of high school. And I always joke, and I say, they're like, are you telling everyone in Charlottesville that we dropped out of high school? And the answer, because they're probably watching, is yes. Yes, I am. I'm going to push it a step further, though, and say that they didn't really drop, they dropped out, but they were forced out. They were an interracial couple in early 80s Virginia. There's two prongs to that. There's a portion related to the race, but there's also a portion related to my mom being pregnant. So because my mom was pregnant, that was not welcome. That was not welcome in school. That gets to the women's right piece. So they left. They left school, and I saw the repercussions and how hard it was for our family, how important it was, education was for me personally, and my parents who went back to school, to achieve economic growth, opportunity, ability to have upward mobility, and I want that same thing for students who might have backgrounds like mine. It's the same thing that drives my work for the Department of Social Services. When I was younger, my family had involvement with the Department of Social Services. I know that families can be struggling, and I want someone with an empathetic eye towards the services that we can provide our community and how it can uplift them to have better outcomes.
Great take. You
So-
fought back some emotion there.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that emotion.
Oh, no, it's just
The hardship you saw firsthand.
Yeah, it's just things. I mean, I think it's important. We're all Democrats. I'm happy we have a crowded field. It brings voters to the polls. It gives them choices. I hope I can earn their vote. I'm happy to have people in the field, but we are all Democrats, and I think we all probably aligned on a lot of things.
I think you guys are.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you guys very much are. Especially you and Dave Norris, and I see Elliot Harding watching, who's a part of the Dave Norris campaign. He's got a question for you that I'll relay on air. John Blair's watching the show here. You have some of your colleagues in City Hall watching you on the show.
Okay, good to know. Let me make sure. I just
There's not a lot separating you guys, except for maybe Bellamy Brown, who ran in 2019 for council as an independent. He's perhaps the outlier in a crowded primary. He went from independent in 2019 to a Democrat here in House of Delegate race. You got what? Cooper, Norris, you, and Brown. This is a competitive race. I'm going to ask you about your competition here in a matter of moments. Before I do, I want to talk about the experience on the school board.
Yeah.
What you've learned,
yeah.
what you would do differently, and the toughest, how you would grade your time on the board.
Yeah.
Show us yours on that.
That was if I was in the court, I'd say that was a multi-pronged question.
It was a multi-pronged.
You got a lot of things going there. So let me see if I can get them all. My time at the board, I am honored to be on the board and serve. And I tell myself that when we have hard decisions, that there are many parents and families that do not have the ability to have an impact on the decision. So even though it's a hard decision, I'm glad that I get to share my viewpoints and make the decision. So I'm honored to be on it. Has it been difficult? Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of tough things that have come up. The pandemic.
Right.
The pandemic, there's been nothing like that in our experience with public education in this country. And I'm proud of the vote that I took a little earlier on about getting our children, third grade and under, our vulnerable populations back into school, because I'm a mother.
You caught some heat for that.
What?
You caught some heat for that.
I did.
I 1,000% agreed with the move you made, though. But you did catch some heat for that.
I did, and it was a difficult decision
Right.
because we all. That's one of the beauties of experience is having that experience, because people had very valid points on both sides, and I did what at the time with the information I had I thought was right, which is I'm the parent. At that time I was a parent of a kindergartner and a second grader, and I knew what it looked like to have education happening at home, and I knew what it required of me and my friends, who we all formed a core team, and I knew that resource wasn't available to everyone, and I knew that we needed to get kids back into school, especially the most vulnerable. So how I would grade myself, I think, was the last one. And I would never, and what I learned. I've learned a lot. I've learned how to listen. That's the most important. It's one of the most important skills. I learned that when I was running for school board. The achievement gap is what drove me to run for school board, and I can talk a little bit more about that. I did Teach for America. I was a teacher. And knocking on doors, I remember knocking on doors and passionately telling people, this is what needs to change, this is what needs to happen, and them kind of being taken aback, and I realized if I stop and I ask people what their experience has been and what they see needs to happen, one, we could find common ground, but two, I could learn so much. So chairing, being vice chair for 2 years, doing public comment, I think my record speaks for myself as having done that with professionalism and in a way that is effective, and I'm happy about. How I would rate us? Great question.
Yes.
Do you know that I was the one that pushed forward our school board evaluation and changes to how we evaluate ourselves?
I did know that.
Yes, prior to that, we would gather, we'd have a conversation, just how are we doing, how do we feel like we're doing, and that was a problem for me. So I helped, I pushed, I kind of made it my baby, which I think is probably evident. I just brought it up at the meeting last night. There's been so many meetings, Jerry Miller. Have you noticed that?
I've noticed that.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. You guys have given this talk show tremendous fodder. Tremendous fodder. I swear in the last 18 months, schools have been the hottest topic of conversation. Most recently, gun, gang, and drug violence has superseded schools. And I got to ask you about that as well.
So maybe I can give a really quick answer and just say for the evaluation, I'm always harsh on us.
Right.
Because ultimately our goal is making sure that we have students that are coming out of our system with the skills they need to get jobs and to have careers that allow them to have success. And I think when you sit back and rest on any kind of laurels or anything you're doing, then that's a failure. And clearly we still have work to do. I am proud of many of the things and steps we have taken and how we're approaching the work thoughtfully, but I would obviously say that there's still work to be done.
I would agree with that. My wife and I have this conversation all the time, to the point where our rising kindergartner, we're giving serious contemplation of where to send him to school.
Yeah.
We live in Albemarle County in Keswick, and there are headwinds with public schools. We're concerned about the busing, school bus drivers. We're concerned about the teacher attrition. We're concerned, certainly not at the kindergarten level, but should he continue to matriculate through public schools, violence in schools. We're concerned about SROs. I mean, I want to spend time on schools. I want to spend time on your campaign. I want to spend time on gun and gang and drug violence.
There's a
I had
lot.
a hard stop at 1:15, so I'm trying to get everything in. I got so many comments coming in. You'll love this from Matt Daring, who's watching in Fifeville. He says, "You're an amazing person." He says, "This is the kind of person that makes Charlottesville so fantastic. This is the kind of person that makes me want to live here. No matter the outcome of this race, please stay involved. Katrina, we need you." That's Matt Daring.
Thank
you have a lot of that on the feed. You also have some straightforward questions. So I want to ask you this on SROs.
Yes.
Where do you stand? The vote was to remove them a few years ago. Haas is asking for an SRO at Albemarle High School specifically because of the trouble. I can say trouble there. Because of the difficulties at the school.
No, I think I'd push back a little bit on that.
You don't think trouble at Albemarle?
I think perception.
Okay.
Because I'm a data person. So we're awaiting more comprehensive data about our disciplinary reports. There was actually a change to the way that the state does accountability for that. So I'm waiting.
Okay.
But the last report that I had received from DARA was that disciplinary issues are actually down this year as opposed to in the past years. That being said, I think they're getting more traction, more newsworthiness. I think there's a general sense of growing unease probably in our community based on also incidents that are happening in our broader area that are putting a focus on it.
What's that mean? What's that mean?
Putting a focus. What do you mean? What does that mean?
You're saying you think the gun violence that's happening in the area is attracting the layman to the violent storyline, and when the layman is attracted to that storyline, they then equate it in some capacity to schools? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying those exact words. What I am saying is that I think there's a heightened focus in our community, which you alluded to at the beginning, on safety, gun violence, and issues with
I agree with that.
Yeah, so I feel like that's bleeding over to the schools as well.
Okay.
That being said, there's absolutely, also we just are in a unique period of time where we're coming, we have been presented at school board level information about our students struggling with mental health, struggling with stress. You talked about the volatile pricing and how we're all feeling basically what is a stressful time in our society. And we're doing a lot of work on many fronts to work on that. Our budget, which I'm presenting to the Board of Supervisors on Monday, has a lot in place to deal with increased mental health supports. We were using a one-time funding source for that we're say it for me.
Operationally?
Operationalizing.
Okay, there we go.
So that we can continue to offer those services. We're also we're doing security assistance. My views on SROs are all on the record. Everything I've done is on the record. And I spoke out at the meeting. The budget approval includes, the SRO, if I'm remembering, is, I want to say $160,000 out of a $257 million budget.
Yeah, it's minuscule.
And so you don't X out the whole budget because of one thing. So I made my views clear, which is that I am, we need to have an MOU to have an SRO in place.
Acronyms. Give me the first.
Memorandum of understanding, basically a contract, although the lawyers then will say like they're not the same, but in essence, to the layman, it's a contract, and it's how it defines the relationship that will exist between the two entities. The MOU that we have, which I said this in my meeting, I have issues with I have issues with it. So no SRO. I do not want to see an SRO in place until I feel comfortable with the MOU we have in place. My concerns are mainly around more of the legal side. So like I have some due process concerns with agreements that we have in place that allow police officers, I just want to make sure that we're doing things in a way procedurally that protects citizenry in the way that I would expect our police to always operate. So the MOU, I would want to see work on. That's the viewpoint that I set forward. That's my feeling on it.
That's fair. That's fair. Slight pushback on the violence in school. I think I use the word trouble. The word trouble in schools. Obviously you're on the school board. You're privy to information that we do not have as chair of the school board. But we have an alleged assault, which we don't have to get into those details. I have too much respect for you to go down that road. I won't go down that road.
Yeah, confidentiality of students.
I promise you I won't go down that road. Yeah, too much respect for you to do that. Okay, but that was in the news cycle.
Yeah.
That was in the Crozet Gazette. It was a topic on this show.
Well, do you mind if I tell you, because I'm not pushing back, and I'm not, yes, people can be concerned about safety at schools. Clearly, we're trying to address it. That's why we're putting security assistance in. And we're trying, and I recall my mom's a teacher in Alexandria right now, and I do not believe Charlottesville has a gang problem.
Really?
Not to that, no.
Okay.
That's through my meetings with the Commonwealth's attorneys.
Not to Alexandria State, or in general, they don't have a gang.
Not to Alexandria State.
Okay.
And we're getting a little, because what I was going to say is my mom, they do have gang violence up there. My mom is a teacher, because of something that occurred outside the school, was asked to step in the building, and they were supposed to guard the doors. I don't want to ask our teachers to do that. No.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're taking it into account. I guess we're also, one thing I want to give Mr. Bonham a shout out, because this is
the principal of Albemarle High School.
Yes, principal of Albemarle High School. I'd love to give him a shout out, because work that he's been doing, and I think this ties into probably something you will ask in a minute, is that we have sports teams, and having recreational activities for our children and our youth so that they can have places where they bring value and they feel successful is important. And we have these sports teams. Many students get cut. We have a JV team. Even that doesn't even nearly touch the amount of students that try out. So Albemarle is rolling out this program where they are building an intramural league to allow students who want to play sports, which is a positive all around. Like 100%. Getting students involved in sports is a positive. So they're doing an intramural program. So there's a lot of work that's being done to engage our students. And the way that I think that wraps into is one thing when we talk about addressing gun violence in our community, one thing I would say is that we are not a standalone, there are not standalone systems. It's the integration of services that we offer in our community. I see that in my work with social services. And schools are one of the primary ways that we get to deep-rooted issues with gun violence.
Sure.
Because when we provide people opportunities, we provide them spaces to grow, we keep them active, engaged, optimistic about their future, then you prevent issues down the line.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see someone who brings that mindset. I also can just speak about gun safety laws, though that's the Democratic ticket, which is we need more gun control laws. We passed the state passed great legislation. It needs to be implemented with better fidelity in terms of background checks. Virginia currently does not have any gun storage requirements. I certainly think should be gun storage requirements when there are children. When you buy a gun, there's no requirement that you purchase a lock or a safety lock to go with it. Those are all things that I could see having an impact as well, and that I would want to see on the state level. I know we've been really focusing on like school specific, but I would note, that there's things I want to see on a broader level.
Catherine Lochner watching the program, she says, damn straight, Katrina, we need a very specific MOU for SROs. She pushes back a little bit on the gang activity in the comments. There's a lot of people watching here. If you have questions for Katrina, put them in the feed. We'll relay them live on air.
Yeah. And can I say to everyone watching, I certainly don't profess to be an expert on everything. So you earlier asked me what I've learned when I was on school board, and that's a great question because I pride myself on trying to learn as I go.
Sure.
And I do know, I think one of the strengths I bring as a candidate is that I do have a legal background. I've been doing child advocacy work for a long time. I did a little bit of criminal representation, but I'm not a criminal lawyer. And so I don't have a full understanding. I will own that I don't have a full understanding of the field, although I can think of some specific things I would like to see, like a little known. Well, maybe it's not a little known. To those who affect, it's a very well-known law that in Virginia, your appointed representation, if you cannot afford it, the Miranda rights, basically.
Sure.
If you lose, if you are found guilty, which is commonplace, we take pleas in many of our criminal cases or plea deals, you are expected to pay that back. And if we talk about recidivism and how we touch upon creating a better or brighter future, we should be propping up those who after they've served their time are back in the community, not giving them fines that are going to keep them down. So there's work I'd like to see done there, but I will say I'm not an expert and I'm always open to feedback.
Respect. I respect that. Elliot, I promised I'd get to your question here. The attorney and the entrepreneur, Elliot Harding, has got one. He says, Albemarle, in giving up KTech, what emphasis, if any, do you think skills trades should have in a well-rounded education?
A lot.
Especially now.
Oh, I get
college. College is not for everyone. An electrician, a plumber, anyone in these apprentice trades can get paid to learn a trade as opposed to taking student debt out. And these folks are making 85, 100, 115 bucks an hour here. KTech, first, what happened with the KTech scenario? And then second, the trades and how it applies to kids.
Okay. I have
It's a two-pronged question.
so okay, it's all right. I can handle two.
I know.
It's when it's like 5. And I did a pretty good job. I
You did
remembered
great.
a lot of them.
You did great.
Let me just tell you a quick story. When I did the child advocacy clinic at UVA Law, this
Okay.
is 10, almost 15 years ago, we had children that were interacting with our legal system, and the response that we had, like an option that we had in our toolbox was, let's see if we can get them in KTech. KTech is where we send students that are struggling with school. This is where we want to send them. We need to change that. Vocational technical education should be a valid career path for everyone. It certainly shouldn't be something that we marginalize or put as like, if you're not doing well, this is what you go and do.
Stigmatized.
Stigmatized, that's a better word.
It's stigmatized.
It's stigmatized,
Yeah.
and it should not be, because it's viable. It's a viable
It's legit.
professions. It's
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. You can earn college credit.
Right.
You don't even if you're, KTech's a wonderful, a valuable resource for students in our region. Even if you don't want to pursue what you're doing at KTech, you can get certifications. You can get skills that can be carried with you.
I think the perception of the four-year degree is changing because the student debt has gotten so astronomically out of control and difficult to manage that now folks are much more open-minded to going, say, the Piedmont route for 2 years, getting a 3.0 plus, than getting guaranteed admission to any state school in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot less debt service there. And I think folks are a lot, certainly very focused on trades now because there's such a shortage in the profession. But I do agree that it has been stigmatized, i.e. you can't cut it in the classroom here, then why don't you go over here as a last resort?
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and that is unfortunate. I want to see changes on that, but there's a lot more to be said about that. Albemarle's been pushing for a while to do career technical education. We've been working to integrate it in our schools. KTech is a wonderful facility. I'm looking forward to what KTech becomes. I think probably you said it was Elliot.
Elliot Harding, yeah.
Probably what Elliot is getting to is the division of the governance structure of KTech from Albemarle, Charlottesville together to just Charlottesville. And that was something, I've been on the KTech board for almost 6 years at this point. KTech has struggled with enrollment and struggled with stagnation, and I think part of that was due to having a governance structure where the vote was split between two localities that might have differing
views or
motivations or plans or whatever. And so by bifurcating it or by giving it back, making it so one or the other of us is in control, I actually hope that will be a positive step forward for KTech. Both parties agreed to continue to let the other localities' students attend. And I can tell you Albemarle is certainly embracing career technical education. We plan on integrating it into our high schools, making it more available. Also for students not having to do a standalone drive to another school to experience technical education.
Jojo Robinson, we'll get to your comments. I got to ask you about collective bargaining.
It's all right. I'm happy to talk about that.
Okay. I got to, where do we stand? We seem to be inching to a finish line. A lot of the teachers that listen to this show that are literally texting me now, I won't say who they are because they're texting during the school day, concerned that they do not have a seat at the table with collective bargaining and negotiation. I'll start with an open-ended question, then ask pointed ones. How do you think this collective bargaining process has gone so far?
I think I've been in good communication with the president of the AAA, especially, so I became chair this year. So since I've become chair, I've made sure to have a monthly, but really it's almost been, I would say every 2 weeks, a call or meeting with the president of the AEA. My personal goals when I got into the seat were open, honest, and transparent, and making sure that what I say is to the extent that I can't predict the future, I can't promise votes, I don't do that, but so that people know where I stand personally. And I'm proud of that. I've seen in my conversations with Vernon ways I could have grown, so I was the one that last year added onto the motion when we were delaying collective bargaining to say we're not going to do it at this time. I took the feedback that seems like you're kicking it down the can, and I'm sorry that they were left with that impression and uncertainty. So I would love, when I came in, that's why I want to have more communication. I want it to be open. I want this to happen at a quicker pace. I want them to know where we stand.
Okay.
And I think I've been really successful with that.
Okay.
The resolution came back to us at the beginning of February. I pushed for having an open discussion about it.
Sure.
I got some feedback, I think, from an opponent about discussing it, but I think good governance involves having open conversations about difficult subjects. We do know now that we've taken the vote on it. It was a split vote. I expressed my support for it. We met with a lawyer. I made that happen. And then we passed a resolution. And then the meeting yesterday, we set forth a timeline that will put us on pace to have it at the same time as Charlottesville, and we set forth how we'll be working with the AA. And I'm sorry there was confusion. I think there was confusion about that. I have been in contact with the president of the AA the whole way. I'm going to say that openly since I've been chair, and I've been transparent, and I'm really excited. I'm excited for our teachers, and I'm looking forward to hopefully, it's a bargaining. So there was one thing that a resolution would be given that they don't agree on. That is certainly not the intent, and it's not the way it works. It has to be mutually agreed on. So I don't want to say it's going to be a rainbow road the whole way, but I'm really hopeful that I'm excited that we're undertaking the process. We're going to be the 7th school division out of 132 in Virginia to start this, and I'm proud of that.
I think the concern, and this is a little more pointed here, and I'm seeing the text from now 4 Albemarle teachers that are watching and listening to you right now. I think the concern was that the collective bargaining was perceived to include the teachers, and now they believe that they don't have a seat at the table during the negotiation and the drafting of any kind of agreement.
So what I would say then is that the meeting, this is breaking news. I can't even pretend.
There you go. You're breaking news.
No, it's not breaking news. I've conveyed, to the best of my ability, I've tried to convey what's going on openly, honestly, transparently, and I stand by that. So yeah, that's more came out yesterday. The goal is to work together. It's the way that the other school divisions have undertaken it as well. I would encourage any of those and all of those teachers to reach out. We also have the EVAC committee going up. So I would encourage them to reach out because they certainly have a seat at the table. And I would remind people it's an agreement, mutually agreed upon by both parties. And so there will never be a scenario.
So you don't feel, you want to, for the record, offering clarity, undoubtedly the teachers
would have a say in what the resolution,
right.
Yes, because they have to
That's
agree
on the record.
on it.
Yeah, do it for the team. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
A given.
Because you heard the feedback. You follow you hear the chatter, don't you?
I'm not going to lie, Jerry. To some extent, I try to. I try to stay focused on the work I'm doing. I try to take feedback well. I respond. That's another thing. Is I'm like the person who responds to all the school board emails now. I've been trying to do a really good job of making sure that I'm reading and responding and letting everyone know. But to some extent, I don't follow social media because social media can be a little bit of a.
Trust me, I make my living with it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It can be a time suck, and it can be.
It can be a time suck, and it can be a little out of place. So, this, I communicated with the AAA president. I knew that the information was coming out, so I apologize to those who felt like they were left without that knowledge. And to some extent, I apologize for that. But we're working, we're trying our best, and I think my record stands.
I respect that. What do you think of the competition in the primary? You got Deshaun Cooper, who is an up-and-comer. I think and this is me talking, this is not you, okay? I think Deshaun Cooper's got a lot of upside. He's young. I think this experience is going to be fantastic for him.
Are you saying I don't count as young?
And I think you're young. You're undoubtedly young. You're not as young as Deshaun Cooper.
No, I'm not.
Are you? Is that safe?
Yeah, no, that's safe.
He's the youngest. I think this is good experience for him, but I don't think this is a primary he's going to win. I
Okay.
think this is me talking, this isn't you.
Okay.
I think it's going to come down to you, Dave, and Bellamy. I think Bellamy, if he's listening, and I believe he's watching the show right now, I would love to see him, if he can change what he's running for, maybe make a push for city council, because I think he can win that race. Not sure he can win the delegate race. I think it's between you and Dave Norris. Okay? Dave is running on a platform that is undoubtedly tied to housing, which is his experience. You're running on a platform that is undoubtedly tied to education, which is your experience. What separates you from your competition? This is a two-pronged one.
Yeah.
It's a two-pronged.
I can handle that.
Okay.
I can handle that.
What separates you from your competition, and why do you think you can win this race?
Okay. Yeah, quite a few things separate me. I mean, if we just go off of the resume, sort of, I am the only person, I'm the only woman in the race.
You
At a
are.
time when women's rights are the number one issue for voters.
You think they are?
I think so, and rightfully so. And
Okay.
it's not just about access to abortion, it's
Okay.
about access to reproductive health care. Reproductive health care for low-income women in particular. It's about having someone with an understanding of how the law can disadvantage women. I would love to have an audit of Virginia Code with an eye towards gender equality. Women's issues, only a third of our legislators are women right now. We need more of them, and we're potentially losing one in this seat with Sally's exit. And so electing
She's challenging Creed Eads, Virginia State Senate. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt. I apologize.
Now, this is like a kind of a clickbait thing, but like a recent thing that happened was they were debating menstrual app data.
saw
If
that.
we're going to be at a state level arguing around menstrual apps, there need to be more women at the table.
I'll give you props for that. Props
So that's something that's different between us. Oh,
for that. You got a clap sound machine right
Yeah,
here.
nice.
I gave you props. Yeah.
the other
I agree 100% with that.
The other thing is that I work for the county and I work for the city.
Okay.
I am the only candidate that brings that experience, and I know a lot about how our localities interact. I know how our needs differ, where they overlap. I know where we can have like a housing task force that actually takes into account all the various organizations that we have both in Albemarle and Charlottesville. So I bring that, having that dual experience.
Is it a conflict of interest?
No.
I've asked this on the show.
Yeah.
Full disclosure. Is it a conflict of interest that you are running for this spot when you work for the city?
No, it is a conflict if I win, I would have to resign school board. I would
Okay.
not continue to serve on school board.
It's not a conflict with the...
No, I am
Okay.
not appointed. I am
Okay.
just an employee, just like anyone in the state
Okay.
is an employee somewhere, and it could presumably eventually be affected by state
But you would
government.
have to obviously resign the school board.
School board would resign.
Okay.
Yes.
Go
Wait,
ahead.
I'm not done.
Please,
Yeah,
please.
I'm
I
not done.
apologize. Sorry. That's my
County,
fault.
city. I'm also the only currently elected official, and I think we talked about it earlier.
In the race.
In the race.
Yeah.
And the political climate has been different, and effective leadership in this climate, I think, is a big boost. That I think we should want a representative that does that. The other thing is if we go back to the women's issues, women are, it's just been shown they're less likely, they always feel like they're underqualified for a job. So I'm going to go on record right now and say that I am the most qualified one for this position.
Ooh. I like that. Moxie.
Yeah.
Most qualified for the position.
I've been doing local government work my whole professional career has been in public service work.
Okay.
I'm a teacher.
Uh-huh.
I'm an attorney for the city.
Yeah.
I represent the Department of Social Services. I represent the airport. I represent the general registrar. I'm chair of the Albemarle County School Board, managing a budget that's $257 million. I have experience. I'm not coming out of nowhere with this. And it's work that I'm passionate about. It's not work that I started because the race is open. This is work that I've been doing for a long time.
You have.
And on behalf of children and families and women, this is what has been driving me, and that's what we want right now.
In your political campaign headquarters.
Okay, let's pretend I have one.
If you have the whiteboard, you're doing political strategizing in the war room.
Yeah.
Is Dave Norris your top competition in this race?
I don't
And I
want.
think Dave is watching.
I think Dave's a great guy. I've never met Dave, but I've heard good things. And I certainly hope, I'm hoping we can have really positive race. I'm looking forward to a positive race. I am trying not to underestimate anyone. So my philosophy,
Okay.
actually my campaign manager and campaign strategist, what we say is empower, empower, include, and positivity. And
Okay.
I am, and hard work, sorry. Empower, include, hard work, positivity. I am so focused on making sure that I do what I need to do to go and listen to voters, talk to voters, do the work I need to do. I'm working hard. I'm doing the city, doing the school board, doing a town hall. I'd love to tell everyone can go to my website. It's katrinacarlson.com. I have got, I think, 14 meet and greets set up. I've got town halls. I've got my school board meetings that I'm at. I am focused on working hard and getting myself into that seat through my own merits. But I can appreciate that there's lots of people in the race, and I hope they're doing the same, and let the voters decide.
Grayson Long, watching in North Downtown. Jerry, I've watched the interview from start to finish. She had my vote before she came on the show. This interview has further reinforced why my family will be voting for Katrina Carlson for delegate. There you go. Just got earned a vote right there from Grayson's family in North Downtown. Matt continues to sing your praises on social media. In fact, a lot of people are singing your praises here. You mentioned earlier in the program that you feel Reproductive may be the top item that drives people to the polls this race.
Yeah, and why shouldn't it be?
100%, you think, not schools.
I do think it's reproductive rights.
Okay, let's go down this road here. Anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, well, reproductive rights need to be codified into the Virginia Code. I heard mention of making Virginia a safe state. That's not even what it's about for me, because the majority of women, when you're pregnant, I mean, we just had. Actually, I don't want to get into specifics, but it's work that I do, and I know, having been a pregnant woman in my life, that pregnancy. When you start putting timelines on when you can get certain medical procedure, it's the decision between a doctor and a woman, and it's based on her situation. And legislators need to make sure that we are not over legislating women's bodies. And it's not just
it's so straightforward. I mean, it's so crazy that we're at this point, right?
Yeah. It's beyond. I'd want to say it's beyond abortion. Because,
yeah, it is beyond abortion.
Because like Planned Parenthood provides pregnancy prevention tools for women. It provides reproductive health care that they might otherwise be able to afford.
Just someone to talk to.
Yes.
Just a conversation, yeah. I mean, isn't it? It's so crazy that we're at the point where, what was the number you gave? How many folks in Richmond are women? Was it a third?
About a third.
A third. So you got 2/3 of delegates men, and they're sitting.
Not just delegates. That includes delegates, senators.
Okay, delegates and senators. Thank you for clarifying that for me. You got 2/3 of these folks, guys, in session, talking about what a woman can or cannot do with her body.
That's right.
It sounds asinine.
And if you say, I have 3 brothers, that's probably going to be the soundbite I don't want. But I love guys. I have 3 brothers. Yeah. It's just.
Oh, you're not marginalizing men by that. No. But I'm just saying, why are men in suits, in session, talking about what women can do with their bodies? It's just absolutely asinine to me. Yeah. But that's the political climate that we're in right now.
And it trickles down. I remember when I actually lapsed in insurance coverage when I was a law school student. I didn't get the reminder to pay the bill. My credit card was expired, so I lapsed, and it was when I was pregnant. And
Oof.
I could not get insurance. Pregnancy is a pre-existing condition.
So you paid the pregnancy cash out of pocket?
I paid up and through my first trimester. Before then, I discovered through, thankfully, a great resource that told me, because I was going to UVA Law, there's group coverage that I could get on.
Okay.
But I did pay for a third, which I guess maybe is making me sound like I don't know insurance policy that well. But at that time, I was just at a loss. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to get private insurance in, and I need to get it pronto because I'm pregnant. And in those contracts, you will sign up, and they will have amendments that aren't even in the initial contract. You have to pull up the amendments, and in there was every single one, a clause. Pregnancy is a pre-existing condition. You don't get coverage. So that kind of knowledge, I guess, and background, and just there's something to be said for representation. And it's not just being a woman either. I mean, I
got the Richmond Times-Dispatch watching you here on the show.
I think so. Having people who've had the lived experience that they're legislating around, I think, is powerful. One thing I haven't said, but it's worth noting, is that people say, am I from Charlottesville? And the answer is really complicated because my dad is adopted. We found his birth family about 6 years ago, and they actually live right here in Charlottesville, even though not right down the street. I see them on the downtown mall. I found that out. I did the 23andMe DNA test. I found it out. We were able to connect. We were able to find my dad's biological parents. They are an interracial couple. My dad was born in 1966, before interracial marriage was legal. So when he was born, his parents could not marry. And his mom was told that she needed to give him up for adoption because the best interest of a child at that time was to be raised by parents who were the same race.
What?
And so he was adopted by a black family. So if you met my dad is 56. Born in 66, birthday September. He's 56 years old, 10 years away from Medicare. He looks young. People think that these laws that racist or unjust or whatever, these laws are way in the past, and they're not. And they can have generational impact. I've seen it in my lifetime. And we need someone who knows how powerful and how impactful these laws are, and that it's important to have someone who cares and cares about a brighter future.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a really neat story. You can look it up. We went and spoke in LA about it because it was really crazy.
What's it like seeing What's it like seeing them on the downtown mall?
Crazy.
Yeah. You just randomly run into them?
Yeah, and because there's so many of them, I will say it was really hard to find so many new family members. People hopefully can relate that sometimes when you're like keeping track of like, who do I have to say happy birthday to? Who do I have to do this?
Yeah.
And like it just grew exponentially. But it was great. I mean, I went to a family reunion in Scottsville because that's basically, I say Charlottesville, and they do live down the road from me in Rio, but some of them, but there's also some based in Scottsville. And so I went to a birthday party in Scottsville, but it ended up having a lot of family members, and it's an experience that I wish I didn't have to go through, because I wish that our family wasn't broken up in that way, but there wasn't a dry eye in there because they were getting to meet this whole segment of their family that they didn't get to meet because of laws that were in effect within our lifetime.
Thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. Questions coming quickly. You have a 1:30, right?
Mm-hmm. I do. I have to go do, I have to prep for the school board budget presentation that's happening on Monday.
You got it. Okay, can we go to 1:25? Would you make it there in time?
Well, then I will, I will just do it on my phone in my car, which is my new office.
That's my second
All right,
office.
I can actually go to my office real quick.
You can happily use that desk if you need to as well. I'll go rapid fire here, try to get as many as possible. We're going to stop in 2 minutes. And Catherine said she saw your video of 23andMe. Yeah, so this is coming in on Twitter. This is a good one. So many topics we got to get to. This is from Dylan's Rule. I would love to hear her ideas on housing. Specifically, could you ask her how she will work with legislators in both parties to increase housing?
Yes.
It's a great question.
That is a great question because we have a split assembly right now. So I can think of a few ideas real quick. Speaking about career technical education, for giving student loan forgiveness for those who are going in the building trades, which I think would help. We have a supply issue right now, so it's difficult to find workers, and that would, I think, help encourage people to get into the building trades and then provide, hopefully, more employees that can then work on houses. Another thing is utility hookups. Not a relaxation of the Dillon's Rule, but a carve-out that would allow localities a little bit more flexibility with how they address housing. Housing development, and this would be bipartisan support because, Republicans support, if I had to assume, developers more. And so utility hookups are a big expense for developers. So if developers promised a certain amount of affordable housing units at an AMI that works for the locality, whether it's 80% of the state level, 60% Charlottesville level, I heard someone on public comment at the last meeting saying 40%, whatever the AMI that the locality appreciates for whatever term, then we could waive utility hookup rates. Same with infrastructure. Infrastructure to get into developments is a big expense. I know this from my work on the school board because when we're looking at places to develop centers, if it doesn't have existing infrastructure, the cost alone is so prohibitive that we can't proceed with that. So there would be a way, I know as a Democrat, we just need more money in our affordable housing trust at a state level, but I can appreciate that that might not get the support that you wanted if it was a split assembly, and so I could anticipate ways you could carve out funding for developments that have affordable housing, and infrastructure would be one of them. If there was a pot of money in VDOT that could be awarded to developments that have affordable housing units. So those are real quick three ways I think you could deal with that.
Last one.
Okay.
Thank you. And it's tough to close on this one. State money, parents, private schools, anywhere you want to go on this topic. A lot of people are split on this. Should we be able to value a public school education and utilize a portion of that value to have parents pay or subsidize a private school tuition?
No.
Your thoughts on that? You say no completely.
No.
Okay. Last question I'm asking you here.
That's in essence
Defunding public schools, is that what you're saying?
That's a euphemism for defunding public
Okay.
education. Now, don't get me wrong. Well, the answer is no to that. Private schools have a reason. Children have different needs. Parents have choice in what they do with their children. Absolutely. State funds. The problem is if you're doing the educational saving plans, I think is what they were called, it is not enough to afford a private school education.
That's correct.
It is supplementing for parents who probably already can afford it.
That's probably true.
It is taking money away from public schools that then are the only option for many of our students. So it's creating a segregation between what is available to our students. It's furthering that. If you're going to put public funds, public monies towards education, it should be for public education. Also, I think of I know Charlottesville's a dense, this district's 11 square miles, I think. Rural counties will not have access to public schools in the same way that we here in Charlottesville think that because this is one of the highest per capita private schools areas in Virginia, I believe. So that solution is limited in its approach, unjust in its implementation, I think, and not the way we need to be moving forward.
There we go.
And if you tie it to parent choice, I will say that parents do have choices. Parents do have choices in what they do with their children. We still need to be putting money towards a robust, inclusive public education system.
You were fantastic. Her website is KatrinaColson.com. KatrinaColson.com. She's at 1:30. She's got to go.
Yeah.
I hope you come back again.
Okay.
Seriously.
Thank you for
Judah
having me.
Wickhauer, our director, KatrinaColson.com. Guys, that's the Friday edition of the talk show. We will be back here on Monday for the I Love CVille show. Thank you kindly for joining us. So long, everybody. Went a little bit longer.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. He's going to tell us when the mics are off. They're going to be off right